So welcome everyone. We're really excited, as Ashley's been saying, we're really excited that you're here. This is part 2 of the Journey to Art Therapy series. This specific iteration is the journey into art therapy graduate programs. So before I introduce our lovely presenters to get started, we would like to thank the American Art Therapy Association's National Office, the Multicultural Committee and Undergraduate Education Subcommittee and Education Committee, volunteers, our presenters and co-hosts for collaborating on this series together with us. This presentation highlights our presenters' art therapy journeys in graduate school, though it's by no means an endorsement for a specific school, nor an indicator of the rich experience that all art therapy programs have to offer. So we mean to provide information that can be generally understood, that could be applicable across all programs nationally. Of course, we're here for you tonight, the members joining us, and we're so excited to have you here. So we hope to get to learn a lot from one another, ask questions, and take this time to reflect on the power of your own journeys. So again, we'll be looking for questions in the chat. We'll be making note of those throughout the presentation, and we'll circle back to those and make sure that we get your questions answered. So Ashley.
Hi, Ash and Kathy, who just spoke at NDMU, will be moderating the chat as we just mentioned. And just behind the scenes, so in a moment, we're going to stop the video and allow our presenters to really shine here today. We have Esther Jones joining us, she, her, and she is a 24-year-old Peranakan American student from Baltimore, Maryland. She loves community settings and grassroots organizations that form around the community that they're rooted in, especially with art therapy and just expressing yourselves. Her hobbies include baking, jewelry making, and reading. And currently they work at the Native American Lifelines, which they'll share more about in a bit. Carly, they, them, is a 28-year-old non-binary individual from Southern Illinois, where they lived their entire life. And they are super passionate about mental health, especially for working with people in the LGBTQIA community that they are part of. They currently work at a community mental health agency and are looking forward to delving into art therapy practice post-graduation as well. For our final words of introduction here, we know that everybody is kind of still coming in, and we want to welcome you to use the chat function to discuss things that you're responding to, or things about your own experiences that you'd like to share, along with any of those questions that you have. And we hope that you get to make the most of this opportunity. If we run out of time for anything, or there's something that you miss or something like that, we will be putting the YouTube up in a week or so once it's edited. And please feel free to email us further at info@arttherapy.org. And I'll share that in the chat momentarily. So, yay, thank you.
My goodness, it is so exciting to see how many people are responding in the chat. This is amazing. So hi, everyone. Again, thank you, Ash. Yep, my name is Esther, and I am a born and bred Baltimorean. And so I'm going to be talking, oops, one second. Sorry, I'm pulling up the slides on my end as well. Oh, interesting. Well, let me start talking about how I came to deciding about art therapy. So what happened was, in my first year, I'd never heard about anything about art therapy. And then I actually had a professor who made me research it. And he knew that I liked art, and he knew that I liked mental health. And then Notre Dame actually opened up a program when I was coming out of my second year. And then I was able to connect with Miss Kathy, who is the head of Make Studio in Baltimore. So I was able to actually intern a little bit there as well. And I was an art major, taking some psych classes and then some art therapy classes as much as I was able to. And it was really important for me to learn about the need for mental health treatment, especially from a culturally informed point of view. So that was really important. And what I did, I made sure that I was in contact with Miss Kathy the whole time about either through Miss Kathy or through someone else in the program, talking about like what classes I would need to take to make sure that I could smoothly transition into the graduate program. So considerations before applying. So one thing that I would say is finding an internship or at least experience in a related field before entering the program if you are interested. For example, someone in my cohort, I have a classmate who was an ABA therapist before starting the program. And then I also have a cohort member who was a fine artist, a couple of cohort members who were fine artists, who just decided that they want to give back to the community in different ways. So what I would suggest is working or volunteering at different clubs or institutions. Like here in Maryland, we have a lot of institutions like the ARC, or different community-based programs that love volunteers. So just deciding what population might be of interest to you. For example, I love community-based settings. I'm more of kind of like a grassroots kind of girl, but some people really enjoy working in a hospital, and that might be you. So just looking for internship opportunities or volunteer opportunities, and finding what population, like kind of clicks with you. Another consideration, working or not working while in school. It can be really challenging to work while you're in school. I work 2 jobs right now, but they're both very part-time, just 1 day a week. And I've found it to be helpful because I need gas money. Gas is really expensive right now. So it's really helpful for me to have like a somewhat steady stream of income. And one of my jobs is actually at where I interned last year. So I'm still getting some of that experience. But then for other people who are really, really focused on their research, really focused on their internship, working just might not be a viable option for them. So that could be something to consider as well. Yeah, especially if you're doing 2 or more internships. Yeah, and as for school locations and or decision to relocate, there are in-person, there are virtual, there's hybrid options. At Notre Dame, it's a 2-year program and it runs throughout the entire year. I had a friend who graduated in undergrad with me and went to a school on the West Coast where it was 3 years, and the first year was just classes, and then the next 2 years was focused on internship, and I don't think they have classes in the summer. So just kind of finding out what works best for you, like if you would like to take it at a slower pace and be part-time, or if you kind of want to just go for it and get it done. But we will be talking about that a little bit more later as well. So this is a resource that is useful for starting the search for art therapy graduate programs. So like, as you can see in this chart, some of these schools are already accredited, some of them are getting their accreditation. So that's just something to be really thinking about as well, because the accreditation process, they might be in the process of it. And that means that you might have to do a little bit more in terms of like hours, but just making sure that the school that you're applying for is very transparent about their accreditation or accreditation process. And this slide, I think, is available on the American Art Therapy Association website as well. So you don't have to memorize this slide. And then this is the search, application, and interview processes. And I think, Carly, I'm going to pass the baton to you.
Yes, I believe so. So starting the application process. So applying to graduate school is really overwhelming. So there's a lot of things to consider going into the process. The applications are usually very extensive. So it's really important to consider all your options so that you have a strategy. So it's important to consider all your options so you know what you're getting yourself into. So it helps to have like a strategy to organize all of the information you're going to be dealing with. So like a spreadsheet, checklist, binder, whatever your preferred organizational method is, just to keep all of that information straight. There's a lot to consider, like class size, class materials, what sort of values the schools have, and funding opportunities can be really helpful for deciding what programs you're going to apply for. Really delve into the program's website to get a good understanding of what you're going to need for that application process.
So you're going to reach a point where you have specific questions for the program. That's going to be a good time to reach out to the program personally, the program director, so you can ask what their expectations are, what their career outlooks look like, and how your prereqs will transfer. All very important stuff to ask. You'll likely need a resume, essays, a portfolio, letters of recommendation for those applications. Each school is going to have different requirements and specific expectations for those applications and etc. So you're really going to want to have a good idea of what they're expecting. Support is so important for everyone, especially through such a process that is very in-depth, a lot of information, and can be overwhelming. So since it's so much information, you're gonna be drained. So reaching out for support can help you recharge. What I find helpful, like throughout any sort of application process, is having folks like proofread things to make sure I'm not missing anything. Sometimes when you read something so many times, it just doesn't even look like words anymore. So it can really help to have someone give you that second perspective. And sometimes people are helpful with like practicing interviews, like just having someone that's gonna help you feel prepared and feel more confident in yourself. And of course, it can help you figure out your strengths and your weaknesses. And always, with anything, take a break. So having your supports can help you get your mind off of the application process, take care of yourself and your non-professional priorities. So you're going to want to unwind and take a break from the application process. You're going to need a break after writing all of those essays. And this here is a few examples of the different ways that support might look like. These are actually little snippets from my final project in my program, where I made a comic book about trans life experiences. So an example of the different forms of support.
All right. So now we're going to be talking about deciding on an art therapy graduate school. So for me, I wanted to stay local if I could help it. And again, this kind of goes back to what Carly was talking about with making sure you have plenty of support. It can be really challenging to uproot, especially if you're going into grad school, and that's not everyone's experience. But I knew for myself that I would probably be wanting to stay around family and friends during this time. And just making sure that I was already familiar with my school and already comfortable with the art therapy program, and had a relationship with, some of the Baltimore people and even some of the DC people, because there are different programs like in the tri-state area. And so, yeah, with working with my school, when I first started, it was 2020. So, and as you all know, something pretty wacky happened. So I started completely virtual. And that was pretty challenging for me, to be honest. And so that was something that I learned, that I'm not a very good virtual learner. And then I also, my whole internship from last year was completely virtual as well. So I was attending therapy sessions, it's like my little Zoom box. I was attending webinars, going to virtual staff meetings. And for some people that worked great for them. For example, again, I have a cohort member who lives and works about an hour and a half away from the Baltimore area. So for her, it was great that she was starting online. So if you're that kind of person, then, more power to you. With some, what did I say? Oh, yes. Okay, so for state licensure status, again, making sure your school is really, really transparent about that and kind of asking about like, what are the steps that you need to take? For example, if you wanted to work in a different state after you graduate. So making sure you're asking your school about like, oh, what does that application process look like? How do I get licensed in a different state? Are you licensed in your state? Is this like statewide and national? These kinds of questions are really important. And again, like at my school, everyone was very, very transparent. And so just making sure that your program, and they might be like a dual licensure program too. So just, you know, being aware of those things. And then so understanding class and internship requirements, it's really different from undergrad. And I'm sure you all know, it's, yes, definitely a totally different ball game. So just making sure you are setting aside time in your grad program to actually study the material, and you're going to be putting it into practice in your internship right away. Like ethics, like what you're learning in the class, like your counseling techniques, like you might be seeing clients within the first month of you working at your internship site. And it can be daunting, but you have a lot of resources. So don't be afraid to ask. And then, yeah, again, with considering post-graduation goals, like what populations you want to work with, what place you want to work, if you want to move internationally. Like we had a few people who started the program who were interested in moving to like Scotland or moving to, yeah, like South America or something. So just making sure you know, like the requirements for those kinds of logistical moves. So expectations in art therapy graduate school. Oops, here we go. So taking art therapy graduate classes, it is very fast paced, it's concentrated. So setting reminders and schedules to help you. For myself, like I was joking with this wonderful group earlier about having a planner and how good it is to have a planner. But if you're like me, you lose your planner within a month. So having a virtual planner, having like calendar reminders, having text like on my phone, like I set calendar reminders with like alarms all the time, alarms for timesheets, alarms for assignments that are due. So just really getting in the habit of that. If you're kind of type B, kind of like a little bit laissez-faire like me, that's gonna save your butt in in graduate school. Yeah, so let me see. Okay, so right now I have 2 internships and I actually just finished up with one of them today. So I've been working at Make Studio, which specifically works with adults with autism in Baltimore. And then the other one is Native American Lifelines, which works with urban Native Americans in the tri-state mostly area, but we are an organization that goes pretty much all the way out to Tennessee, but most of our clients are coming from like Baltimore, DC, Virginia area. And I learned so much from both of these internships and from my internship last year as well. But again, because it was all virtual, it's a very different experience. But yeah, learning about your work culture, learning about how your supervisors and how the other counselors or art therapists, how they're working in the organization, the things that you kind of want to maybe like take from and learn from their experiences, and maybe some things that you might even do differently. Yeah, so it's really important to connect with your professors and with, again, like with your supervisors. You are going to want to communicate a lot. Communication is also, yeah, like I can't understate it. It's really, really important that you're asking your professors about, like, for example, if you use disability services or you need to advocate, that you would be informing them right away and making sure that you're setting up time to meet with them, maybe dropping into office hours. And the same with your supervisor. Supervision has definitely been a lifesaver for me this year. My supervisor has tons of clinical experience and like he's, yeah, like a very, very good supervisor. So just really absorbing any time that I could to just pick his brain, ask him questions, get his clinical knowledge, his cultural experiences as like a Native American clinician, and kind of learning about all of these different things was definitely yeah, definitely an invaluable experience. So yeah, and also with your classmates are also an invaluable resource. They are all in such different settings. Like, for example, I have a classmate who works in a military hospital. I have someone who works in like a class setting. And for me, working in community settings, I haven't had that experience before. So learning from them is just as important as learning from your professors and from your supervisors. And Carly, I think this one is yours.
Yes. The slide's looking kind of funky. Is that just on my end? Oh, there it goes. So my personal graduate experience was a lot different than I had anticipated. So my program at SIUE is a 3-year program. And so I started in fall 2019, and my second semester was interrupted by COVID. So my experience has been all over the place. At first it was fully in person, then it was fully virtual. And then as things sort of calmed down, it became more of a hybrid experience. So it was very jarring, very dramatic shift, but it also allowed for a wide range of experiences, which was very great. I never would have imagined learning to provide art therapy through a screen. Didn't know that was something I could do. So that was interesting to learn. The SIUE program that I was in was really community focused, which I love. So I really had a great time, like just finding ways to be in community with others, like art hives, making art together. We had like these community meetings where we pick a topic and just sort of bring our experiences and come together. Our cohorts are all very small. My cohort had 11. I think the one under me had 9 or 10. So very small community. And we actually have a mentor system, which I think is really great because it keeps each cohort connected to one another in a way where we can really learn from one another's experiences. And it's really, really supportive, just being able to like build that community together. Now we're going to talk about burnout prevention and self-care.
Hopefully everyone can read this comic. And this is an example of a burnout experience. And it doesn't always have to be this extreme, but you can be proactive when you notice yourself feeling drained and laying in bed for 17 hours. So what is burnout? And I'm sure you guys have heard lots of talk about burnout or compassion fatigue, these different kinds of vocabulary. So burnout is excessive emotional, physical, and mental stress. It basically is, it affects how you relate to others. It affects your activities at work and school and your daily processes, energy and motivation. It makes it really hard to do the things that you used to always do without really any effort at all. So as art therapy graduate students, we are always learning about ourselves and others and taking care of one another. And if you're in this field, you probably like helping people. And we might have challenges at school, internship and work, and our personal lives. So again, like life doesn't get put on hold while you're pursuing a graduate degree. So it's really easy to just take on more than you can handle, and it can lead to burnout. So in its intense chronic stress, and again, you can have like a mental fog, like a really hard time with compassion or with empathy. And it really does affect, and it can start very slowly, but you know, eventually it can be quite difficult to function with burnout. It can feel like emptiness or lack of energy. from increasing and overwhelming emotional, physical, and mental stressors. So that can include like you feeling constantly negative. Like if you used to be a very cheerful, chipper person, you might notice yourself becoming like irritable or depressed, have a lack of motivation. And even activities like eating or exercising, you just might not feel like you have the energy. So what I like to think of like load-bearing mentality is like a lot of times, so for example, like a bridge has like a bunch of struts underneath it to support the entire load. And if one of those struts is taken away, if the bridge is well designed, the entire bridge will not collapse. And that's kind of how I think about with our brains. Like we don't just have one coping mechanism that we rely on for taking care of our entire mental health. We have a lot of supports. We have the things that we do outside of work or school. And as Ash mentioned, like I've been really into jewelry making recently. I love natural stones. That's been really, like the bilateral stimulation is really great. I meet with friends. I talk with my cohort members. I talk with supervisors and talk with professors, and like all of that kind of is able to support you as you are dealing with a lot of stuff, both professionally, personally, and yeah, like as you work and try to attend school. Yeah. Oh, oops, did I skip ahead? Yep, there we go. So how to practice burnout prevention, incorporating small ways of taking care of yourself. Again, I like to say that the best offense is a good defense when it comes to this. You're having friends and family around you, including like things that you like to do for yourself. Maybe they're not grand gestures. Maybe they're just like very, like actually getting up and taking a walk. If you're on your computer for 7 hours, like you're gonna have a lot of fatigue and you wanna be able to move your body. Your body is where you live, you gotta take care of it. Maintaining healthy boundaries with others. So not agreeing to everything, not trying to help out every time your friends decide to move, making sure that you're taking time to still help out with others, but also taking care of yourself. So drinking water, that's been big for me this year. I've been like chronically dehydrated my entire life, and this is the year that I finally started drinking water. Recognizing your growth. So hobbies, again, journaling, making process art, that's still something, and we're art therapists. That means that like we are supposed to be engaging in the art process. So if you can, just, even if it's just like a little 5-minute splatter paint, just doing some processing. And again, so scheduling time to be with yourself, for yourself, and not feeling guilty about it. I think a lot of times we are kind of primed to be like productive all the time, and that's not how people work. We're not machines. So just wanting to make sure that you have enough time to be taking care of yourself.
Okay, so some information about self-care. So self-care is, of course, very important, and it can be necessary, like if you are experiencing burnout, self-care can help you sort of move through that process, because it helps regenerate that energy that's been depleted, basically. So what do you do to practice self-care? It's going to look different for everyone. But basically, it's taking care of your physical being, the body that you're living in, your emotional needs, socializing and engaging in supportive relationships. Like I talked about earlier, it's so important to have that support. Sometimes you just need to have someone to chat with, to vent to get your mind off of stressful things. Making sure that you're honoring whatever spiritual or cultural practices that you like engaging in. I think sometimes people forget that we are connected to the earth and connected to our cultural backgrounds. So it's important to engage in those things, to remember that we're more than just our professional person. So something that I like to do, I think this is super helpful, is make like things like this little graphic that's on the screen right now. So since there's so many different ways to practice self-care and everyone is different, I like to kind of make my own personalized like check sheet or reminder kind of thing. So that's what this is a little way to remember things that I need to do for myself to practice self-care. Because when we're so busy with school and work and family and everything, it can be hard to remember those things. So it's can be nice to just have a nice little quick visual to remember those things.
So now we're going to go to the key takeaways. Please research each art therapy graduate school you're interested in to make the best decision you can. There's so many amazing programs out there, a lot of them with different focuses. Like I know there's some schools that are really research focused. So if that's your wheelhouse, that might be something to consider. Some places are a little bit more social justice action oriented. Some places are really multicultural. So just looking into all of that for a good fit, because like your school, you know, you're going to spend years there. So making sure that you are like aware of all these different things. So ask for help and connect with others, and know your experiences, wisdom, and journey are unique. They're like, again, each person is so different, and I really just want to like reiterate that. I know I'm kind of like hammering it home, but some places are a little bit more art focused, some places are a little bit more counseling focused. So just wanting to honor your natural proclivity in the way that you experience art and the way that you the ways that you want to give back to your community or research. Those are all really important. So I think that brings us to the end.
Yeah, thank you so much to our presenters, jazz hands and the claps and the snaps and all of it. I'm here for it. Thank you, Carly and Esther, for sharing so many unique lived experiences, as well as like the honest, powerful experiences of what it's like to be in graduate school. We're really grateful that you took this time to share those personal and professional growth experiences, because it gives us realistic expectations and just like honesty and transparency for what to expect, you know. Graduate school is hard, and you both are in it and are doing awesome. And I'm really excited to see where you go in the future with your community work, the art hives, and everything. So before we wrap up for the Q&A time, this is the time for you all to get to know your audience a little bit and for the audience to get to know you a little bit more. I just want to remind everybody that this is the second presentation in a 4-part series, The Journey to Art Therapy Profession. The third presentation will take us into the art therapy practices and jobs after graduate school, which takes place same time, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Coast time on June 22. And the final part will discuss advancing art therapy through private practice, teaching, research, and just being a social justice advocate art therapist on July 13th. Same time, 7 to 8 p.m. East Coast. That is like 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock for me. I am on the West Coast. And so we hope that you will be there for us and with us to catch those ADA events. And I want to take it back to Kathy and our presenters so we can go through our Q&A. Yay! I will stop sharing screen if that's cool. Okay, cool. Okay. Yay, thank you.
Great. So we have a number of questions, and they're coming in now, fast and furious, of course. But we have a number of questions to throw to you, Esther and Carly. And maybe we could start with, what was the most surprising thing about being in grad school? You're right.
I think for me, the most surprising thing about being in grad school was the fact that it was such a community experience. It was really surprising because like in undergrad, oftentimes it's like you're in your own bubble, you're in your own little world, but in graduate school, you get this cohort, this little group of people that you're with throughout the program, and you can't just you can't not connect to people. And that was, I think, the most surprising for me.
Yeah, I would say for me, it was how resilient my classmates are. Like a lot of them have experienced like great personal tragedy actually within the last 2 years, and seeing them continue on in the program despite like grief and loss, especially during the pandemic, it was really inspiring. And I know that sounds a little bit cheesy, but genuinely I was blown away with how a lot of them reacted to great stress. So I would say that that was probably for me.
Fantastic. Thank you both. Another question that came up several different ways, so I've kind of collapsed them, is if you could speak to any tips or topics relative to the personal essay or statement of purpose that might be required, and or the portfolio. So tips or strategies around that, your experience of those things.
So I sort of touched on this a little bit in my like getting support from other people slides. Like I said, I find it really helpful to just like ask people questions, ask for that second set of eyes. So I think that's really helpful. And also just like really doing some soul searching and figuring out like what your values are and knowing what do you want to do with this degree. Like I want to work with LGBTQ plus folks because that is something I'm super passionate about, and I feel like there's a big need there. So when I think about like my values and what I want people to see when I'm like putting everything on the table, that is one of the things, of course, I need to mention. So that's what I think about the personal essays and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, for me, I knew someone who was a year ahead and had actually started the program already, so I was able to ask them for some tips. But also, you can definitely ask like maybe people who are recruiting or reaching out, doing community outreach, asking them like, oh, like, you know, like, what is your program like? Like, what is, you know, like, what are you looking for, kind of like in some ways of like for art therapists. And then for me, I think I touched on like my own different like cultural and like heritage background, and kind of expressing, because again, like Baltimore's very multicultural, and kind of wanting to express like, hey, like this is what's important to me. It's similar to what Carly just said about my own values. So I think that that was probably a big part of it. And also, yes, for portfolio, I would definitely say if you were like an art major or something, just making sure that you are like taking pictures and kind of documenting like all of these different artworks, because you might be like whipping out artwork like crazy and like losing track of it. So if you can take pictures of it and making sure that you have, I think for Notre Dame, it was, I think 7 or 10 pieces. I don't remember exactly, but like it was like a fair amount. So just making sure that you have pieces that you're really proud of, that you really like, and then that you can kind of express yourself, like something that's unique about you with your artwork. So that's what I would say. Like, yeah, just making sure that you have a wide range of artwork that you feel really good about.
Real quick to jump back in about the artwork, I thought it was super helpful to like pick specific pieces that had a lot of like thought behind them or a lot of value or emotion, because in my experience they're going to ask you about that during the interview. So it helps to have a piece that you can talk a lot about and not just say, this one looks nice.
Well, I'm going to turn my lamp on really quick.
Yeah. Carly, you took the words out of my mouth. I was wondering if someone might say such a thing. So thank you for sharing that personal narrative kind of aspect to the portfolio and your thinking. Another question that's, again, kind of a conglomerate. There's some folks considering career change, returning to school, and so really probably holding in balance work experience, needing to work full time, needing flexibility. So wondered if you both could speak a little bit to what it's like to maybe attend part-time while working a full-time job, or what you know of different types of program structure that may be accommodating, given low residency or online options, et cetera.
I can say for me, I was able to work part-time while going to school full-time, and that worked for me because our program was just Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and so I was able to work Monday and Friday. But I did know someone who was working full-time and didn't take their internship yet, was waiting to do their internship and was attending the classes, but was working during the day. And it can be really challenging. My supervisor worked full-time and went to school full-time. And I think slept 4 hours a night. So that might be something to consider as well. So yeah, it would be very hard to work full-time and go to school full-time. It is doable, but probably not great for your sleep schedule. And as for, yeah, that's, I guess, what I would say about that.
Yeah, it's definitely doable. For me personally, I worked Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and had classes and my internships on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I technically worked part-time, but it didn't feel like I worked part-time because I worked basically 30 hours through the week and in addition to school full-time. I think there's some flexibility, at least with the SIUE program, where you can take some classes in the summer. It's technically a 3-year program, but we have folks that kind of do part-time and it just takes them a little bit longer, and that's perfectly fine also.
Fantastic. A couple more questions that are really interesting, I think. This one is, what prerequisite classes, because acknowledging there's always prerequisites, both in psychology and art, and some of those are pretty prescribed or are prescribed nationally. And so you're going to encounter that across the country when you're looking at programs. But what prerequisites in terms of either electives that you took to comprise your studio art or psychology were most helpful, do you feel, to being successful in the program?
I think one of the prereqs that I found most helpful was probably the course is called psychopathology. So basically it goes over the DSM diagnoses and all of that stuff. And I thought that was personally helpful. One, because I also had to take psychopathology at the graduate level. So I kind of already had that knowledge base. But also working in community settings, oftentimes through Medicaid, they have to have diagnoses in order for insurance to bill. So being able to kind of understand those diagnoses at more than just a surface level is super helpful.
Yeah, I was going to say abnormal psych was probably one of the, or I guess psychopathology. I think at the, I ended up taking a couple classes in between undergrad and graduate school. So they called it abnormal psych, but I believe that other people might call it psychopathology. But that one was really helpful. So just wanting to reiterate that. And it was also very eye-opening as well, because I was just talking with my supervisor about it today, and he was saying that he had a cohort member who specifically only wanted, this is his words, specifically only wanted to work with sad, white, middle-aged women. And I was like, yeah. And so that was interesting. I was like, okay, that's a very specific population. So getting your psychopathology prerequisite, it really opens the door, and you're like, oh, there's so many different diagnoses, and learning about trauma, learning about all of these different ways that and learning how to have compassion as well. That was something that was kind of hammered home for us in that class as well. Like, you know, like you're not looking at them like, oh, they're, you know, they're sick, they're this way, but like kind of learning about like why people might present a certain way, and like treatment options as well. So definitely making sure that that is highlighted as well. But another class that I really liked that I took ceramics. I've actually taken 3 ceramics classes now because I loved it so much. And that was actually, I remember taking it the first time and everyone kept saying in the class, like, this is so therapeutic. Even if they weren't like, you know, they were just taking it kind of for fun, but a lot of the people really enjoyed just getting their hands, you know, messy, like, you know, making something kind of out of mud. Basically, that's what it felt like. And that was something like, if you can, I definitely recommend ceramics because you're probably going to end up using it at some point in your either at your internship or in your career. I know I have. So that might be something, kind of a plug for ceramics.
I was definitely thinking of ceramics also, so I'm glad that you said ceramics.
That's great. And in general, I think we would all agree that like just having a real range of experiences in studio arts so that you have a real felt sense understanding, a visceral understanding of those materials and the capacity. So, but yeah, love ceramics too. Another question, and I see a question that just came in on dual programs, and that's a good one too, but I have one in the queue. So maybe we'll answer that one next. But maybe speaking a little bit to, do you feel, has it been your experience that there have been some innate things that make for a good art therapy graduate student? Either yourself discovery, you've discovered this, or in your cohort, it's become apparent among your peers or among your cohort, versus those skills that, of course, we're training you to appreciate or to try on, right? But what those innate things?
I guess I would say like openness, like, because you're going to be challenged in a lot of ways. You're going to see things from a lot of different perspectives. And I think being open to those challenges that are going to come up is really necessary, because that's how you're going to learn and grow and become like the best art therapist that you can be, is by being open to learning things, even if it's challenging.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I would say the most effective therapists are, at least in my experience, are the ones that hold space and are good listeners. And again, I keep referencing my supervisor because like, again, I've just learned so much. But he was saying like that he's certified in like EMDR, he's certified in like all these different modalities of training. Like he has all this experience under his belt and just knows so much about all these different like treatments, such as like CBT, DBT, you know, all like, you know, he has books upon books about all these different things that he's trained in. But he was saying that people just want to be listened to, people just want to be heard. So I would say that that is probably the most important thing that I can say, is like, do you want to hear people versus just offering solutions? Like, is it okay if you just hold space for someone? Is it okay if you can be quiet with someone? And so that's what I would say in regards to that question.
Both of those were so beautiful. Thank you both. Oh my gosh. Okay. There were a couple other pieces that came in. One is a lovely question about arts and medicine versus art therapy programs. I don't know if Esther or Carly, you'd like to speak to that or know anything about that. I will say, before I turn it over, to see that arts and medicine is an emerging field. Art therapy is a 50-plus-year-old field. Not that there's, you know, anything hugely wrong with that, right? We're all at different stages of development, but we have, national credentialing and certification, board certification. And I think as an emerging field, there's a difference there. And my understanding here in Baltimore, there's a connection with arts and healing and arts and medicine. And it is very neuroscience and wellness focused. So that is just something to know about arts and medicine. And I will leave it at that. I admittedly don't know too much. So I hope I haven't misspoken. Yes, Ash.
Yes, that was awesome. And also I'd like to add on to that this particular program that was linked here or asked about is actually an online graduate program, kind of like Edinburgh, I believe. So it's all online. You can do it from the comfort of your home. And then you can also really dig into the research or the neuroscience or the psychology behind the art as medicine, which is different from the art therapy as practice, where that's more of the focus is like the art making process. All of it is encompassed in both types of programs, but they're just very different like focuses. So thank you for asking that.
Esther or Carly, anything to add? Am I still muted? No. Anything to add to that? Okay. Oh, Carly?
No.
Okay. All right. There was also a question about counseling compact law. That's beyond the scope tonight of our conversation, but I did notice that ADA is sponsoring a licensure, I think, discussion on June 9th, I believe it is, coming up. So for more information on events that ADA is hosting that may be relevant to that or other topics of interest, please navigate to the ADA website. There are lots of valuable programs and events upcoming. Or to access in retrospect. And I think we'll end with, there was a question that we haven't gotten to on time frame of program and training. And someone had asked, is 5 years really how long it takes to become an art therapist? So I want to leave that open-ended in terms of your experiences, because I know Carly and Esther, you've got different experiences and then different post-grad experiences that you're looking at.
Yeah, so I'll talk about my program. Again, it's a 3-year program. I recently graduated beginning of May. Yay. So I am in the process of getting my LPC, licensed professional counselor licensure, and that is a 2-year process along with the ATR 2-year process. So in total, mine will be a 5-year process. But again, if your program's a different length, it's going to be different.
Yeah, and for me, so I started in 2020, and it was 2 full years. So like including summer and winter classes. And so by the time I graduate in August, I will have, if all goes well, I will pass the boards and I will have my my licensed graduate licensed graduate art therapist, the LGPAT. And I should have that, and that would mean that I'm able to practice as an art therapist. I would still be needing supervision, and then when I have accrued my hours and take the final, like, apply as the kind of like final form. I always like compare it to like Pokemon a little bit, but like when I evolve to my final form in about 2 years, that would mean that I would be like a LCPC. No, sorry, I said it wrong. LCPAT. I'm sorry, Miss Kathy. Yeah. So that would be, and so I would be an art therapist, board certified, and I would have my, and I would be at my final form. Yeah, hopefully that answered. I feel like that was a little confusing.
Yeah, just to tack on here in Maryland, we do have that license to practice, but the ATR and the BC process is embedded in that process post-grad. So, right, just to clarify, you'll be working on both of those things. And then Oh, okay, good. Ash answered that question. I think the only other, it looks like we're at time, actually. So I don't want to hold people past time, and wondered if anyone had any final words to share. I've certainly appreciated everyone being here with us and having wonderful questions to ask. Certainly if folks have follow-up questions or feel like their question wasn't answered thoroughly or at all, unfortunately, then please reach out to info@arttherapy.org, and add a staff will get right back to you with that information. So I thank everyone for being here, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues.
Yeah, I'll end it in a second, but I just want to say that you all gave me so much to think about and so much to be inspired by that I'm gonna make art after this. So yay. Yeah, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your evening or day or wherever you're at, whatever you're doing. Take some time to rest, make some art, and see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Carly and Esther.